For this video, we have chosen some of the creepiest paranormal stories that we could find, but I've also included other mysterious cases that we found to be truly fascinating. Hope you enjoy. Let's begin. Number 1. Mary Delphine McCarthy was born on March 19, 1787 to a large, wealthy and a powerful political family. Due to having such powerful connections, she was socially highly regarded. Delphine was married 3 times, but it was her last marriage to physician Leonard Lalaurie which caused the most controversy. In 1831, the married couple bought a mansion which became known as the Lalaurie Mansion. It was a beautiful house that was used for social parties to the elites. Like many of the elites at the time, the family owned slaves. Now, even though Delphine was thought of as a beautiful and intelligent woman, some were starting to question if she might not be as beautiful on the outside. She seemed to change her slaves quite often. Where were the slaves that she had before were questions that some of her visitors would ask themselves. It wasn't a shock to neighbours when Leonard eventually left the family home in 1834. Neighbours often heard the couple continuously arguing, but it wasn't until a few months later, on the morning of April 1834, that really shocked the whole country. That morning the mansion was on fire. It's believed that the fire could have been started by a slave, and you're about to find out why. The fire destroyed part of the house, showing just how evil Delphine was to her slaves. There were 7 naked slaves that were found to be starved, chained and tortured. The city was in total shock. The media at the time were calling her a monster, a demon in the shape of a woman. Thousands of angry people turned up at the mansion just to see if this news could actually be true. Some of the slaves that could be helped were given medical care and water, but for some it was just too late. The mob in the end completely demolished the house. Legend has that it was found that one of the female slaves had their bones broken, and then that bone was set in an unnatural position. So when the female slave moved, her limb stayed bent. Another slave had a hole in his head with the spoon sticking out. It's thought that maybe the spoon was used to stir the slave's brain. Another slave was found to have their intestines taken out. It's just pure evil. The garden was also destroyed, where skulls of the deceased slaves were found. It's no surprise that with all this dark history, when the house was rebuilt, tenants would leave saying they heard screams in the night. Year after year the house was sold, not long later to be on sale again after the tenants would leave, saying they were hearing disembodied voices and screams in the night, where tortured souls still haunt the location. Is now regarded as one of the most haunted places in New Orleans. Number 2. Kenneth Arnold was an American aviator and businessman. On June 24, 1947, while flying near Mount Rainier in Washington State, Arnold claimed to have seen 9 unusual objects flying in the sky. The objects were said to have been glowing blue and white, and were travelling at an incredible speed, much faster than what any known man-made object could possibly travel. The media went mad, sparking a worldwide fascination with flying saucers. When the US Air Force were investigating the sighting, they formally listed the case as a mirage. There were so many UFO sightings about this time, such as the Roswell incident that took place in the same year, that the government actually set up Project Sign. The full files of Project Sign were declassified in 1961. The project finally argued that UFOs were likely of extraterrestrial origin, and most of the project's personnel came to favour the extraterrestrial hypotheses. Before this opinion rejected and Sign was dissolved and replaced with Project Grudge. It seems that if your investigation leads to a conclusion that doesn't suit the people in high places, then you'll be replaced by a project that does. The final conclusion of the project was published in 1949 that stated that while some UFOs appeared to represent actual aircraft, there was not enough data to determine their origin. Number 3. The Kent School was built by the Franciscan Order in 1913 in Germany. It was a huge facility that consisted of buildings such as a hospital, a school and a church that sheltered for 600 disabled and impaired people. With the coming to power of the Nazis in Germany, they tried institutions of the Catholic Church. The Franciscan order was sued and made to pay fines that eventually bankrupted it. Due to the political party embracing the philosophy of euthanasia, they used the facility to murder mentally handicapped children on racial cleansing. The young children each got 3 to 5 luminal tablets. They would fall asleep, and if they woke up, they would have got another dose of luminol. This would have been repeated until they were finally unconscious. They would then have symptoms such as shortness of breath, and then end up dying a miserable death with discharge of mucus from the mouth and nose, so an ordeal could take up to 8 days. After the Second World War, the Franciscans were given back the land, but financially it was no longer possible to keep, so they sold it to the federal government, who then leased it to the British. It's now said that at times you could still hear the ghosts of the murdered children wailing and screaming during the night. The corridors would be empty and you could hear weeping in the empty hallway. Such sad history. Number 4. For the past couple of years, scientists have been debating about a star dubbed as the most mysterious star in the universe, because the star doesn't act like any other star scientists have ever discovered. KIC 846-2852 is a star that is about 1,000 light years away from our planet Earth and has a mass that is about 1.5 times larger than our Sun. It's also about 5 times brighter. Now, what's so odd about this star is for how long the brightness of the star faded. Now, when a planet passes in front of a star, the light of the star is blocked out. But with KIC 846-2852, the star faded for about 5 to 8 days, and at times lost about 20% of its brightness, which means whatever was passing the star was enormous, much larger than Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. The dimming of the light from the mysterious star was also irregular. A planet going past a star should leave regular intervals, with the same dip in brightness each time, but scientists were puzzled as this just wasn't happening. What this meant was whatever was causing those dips was a mystery. Scientists believe that the weird behaviour of the star could be caused by a huge family of comets swarming the star. It could be another massive undiscovered star. Maybe even the star KIC would be consuming a planet, but none of the theories could fully explain the dimming. One theory that the media loved was that the dips was a result of an alien megastructure. It just sounds so cool that 1,700 people donated over $100,000 to fund the campaign to further observe the star. Theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson had popularised the idea of such an alien structure back in the 1960s. He said that an advanced alien civilization would eventually develop the technology to harness energy from its star. One way to do this would be to build a huge structure around the star that could generate power from it. It's a theory that some scientists believe is possible. The theory of maybe it being connected to aliens was tested by researchers, who tried to find radio signals from the star's galaxy in hope they would find something that would make history, but the results came back with nothing. On May 2017, the star faded again. The star dipped about 3%, which confirmed it was no fluke. The latest popular theory by scientists is that the dips could be caused by a large amount of dust. What do you believe is causing the star to fade, and do you believe aliens exist? Number 5. On April 10th, 1990, 4 men set off on a 7-day commercial fishing expedition out of Georgia. The captain of Cassie Nicole was 23-year-old Billy Joe Neesmith. His crew included his brother Nathan, his nephew Keith Wilkes, and a friend Franklin Brantley. At about 4:30 AM on the second day of his trip, Nathan noticed the boat was acting sluggish and riding deep. This is when the men found out that there was water on the boat. To make it even worse, the pumps weren't working and the power was out, so they couldn't radio for help. Basically, everything that could have gone wrong seemed to have gone wrong. The men then got buckets to try and empty as much water as possible, but it wasn't enough. The water was coming into the ship at a much quicker pace than what the men could get out of the ship. The Cassie Nicole was sinking. The men had no choice but to abandon ship and boarded the life raft, which was basically rotting away. After a while of drifting away, they noticed that the abandoned ship was heading towards them. Going against the advice of his crew and captain, Nathan got out of the raft and went swimming towards the ship. It's said that Nathan swam for 7 hours to get to the Cassie Nicole. The crew didn't want Nathan to leave the raft because they weren't sure what would happen if they split up. Well, by dusk, Nathan lost sight of the raft. By morning on April 12th, he noticed a freighter about 3 miles in the distance. He watched as it seemed to stop and circle in the vicinity of where his crewmates were for 3 hours, but it never came for him. He said he shouldn't have regretted splitting up with his crew, as he seemed now destined to go down with the ship. He recalled as he noticed the freighter was making deliberate course changes, like it was picking up the 3 castaways. After 4 or 5 stops, it continued into the horizon. For 3 days Nathan was drifting in the ocean. He was badly sunburnt and dehydrated. On April 15th, Nathan was finally rescued. Now this is when the mystery begins. Nathan thought that a freighter picked up his crew members, but despite a large-scale search by the US Coast Guard, no trace of the crew was ever found. Later that year, Nathan and Billy Joe's sister Oneida received a message from a person speaking only Spanish trying to give her a message, but the only intelligible words were her name and phone number. Shortly into the conversation, the caller hung up. That same day, Doug Tyson, the owner of the Cassie Nicole, received a similar call from someone speaking broken English. When he had visited the Neesmith family, he recounted his strange call. 3 more calls eventually came, 1 to Tyson and 2 to Oneida, until 1991, when the caller finally said one complete sentence in English: "I am bringing them home." In her testimony, Oneida believes the caller is a native of a Spanish-speaking foreign country who has befriended either one or all 3 of the captured men and has taken extreme risk to himself to communicate with Tyson and Oneida. According to US government records, the 3 men are lost at sea and have been declared legally dead. Some theories suggest that the men could have been captured and used as slaves. Some believe that Nathan murdered the crew or suffered with guilt and imagine that his whole crew was rescued.